Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. It's me, Stephen, with John and Nessie, back for another discussion. How are you guys doing this weekend?
I'm good.
John,
Can you hear me?
there you are. You were weird. You sounded weird for a second.
I can hear some background noise from something. I think it's Nessie. Yeah.
Nessie got the AC blowing or something. Yep.
But yeah, you can hear me okay though, right?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah.
So I will repose the question. How you doing this weekend?
I'm doing good. I want to point this out. I'm actually wearing a very old shirt. This is a Star Wars shirt that I got back when the special editions came out. And it's modeled after Calvin Klein.
Oh, nice.
Stuff. And I can't believe that I can still wear it at all because this is from 13-year-old me.
So we did not coordinate this, but we are all wearing Star Wars. Like there was no communication. We all just showed up wearing Star Wars. Now I know Thrawn is in the thumbnail, and some of this is gonna, like Star Wars is one of the perfect sort of not genre, but just intellectual properties to bring up to have this discussion about. It's gonna be good.
Yeah,
also,
Kate, I already knew I was gonna make some people mad with some comments that I'm gonna make. So why not go all the way and just, go ahead and enjoy the rage coming my way.
Right. And gotta say there's some love for ye old background here. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome. But yeah, so let's not bury the lead too much. Well, you know what, Nessie, how are you doing this weekend?
Well, I'm doing great, Stephen. I had the weekend off. I got to play some D&D with my buds.
Yep, we played
Company
earlier.
included. Yeah.
We played earlier today.
Yeah. So any day you get to play D&D, that's a good day.
It's a pretty good day. Yeah. John famously hates the beard, but like.
Yeah, I mean, and you've said it yourself, Stephen. What makes me happy is important. So.
That's true. I mean, I'm allowed to like the beard, and you're allowed to shave it off. It's your face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing pretty all right. I played D&D over the weekend, and yeah, I didn't have to do a whole lot of anything else. So played some video games and played some D&D, and it was not too bad. Not too bad. Oh yeah, we did play for 6 hours last night, D&D too. But we finished up that campaign, so that's good. Anyway, we're not here to talk about my D&D shenanigans. We're here to talk about Canon.
But not that kind of Canon.
But not that kind of Canon.
Which I can't believe we're actually finally having this conversation because I feel like I brought up the idea
6 months ago.
I think it's been longer than that.
Maybe. It's been a long time coming.
And I remember at the time you were like, John, I think you feel more passionately about it than I do. And I think it's because it's something Star Wars had come up recently, and so my mind was really going with all the canon stuff because I had actually read my first Star Wars quote unquote legends books back right when Disney bought Lucasfilm, and there was talk about what was going to happen with the canon, and then soon after, Lucasfilm said we're doing away with like everything that wasn't either the films or Clone Wars, and that was when I went ahead and read the Throng Trilogy, and we'll get into it more in depth, but I will say that I remember when I read that, it reminded me of the feeling that Star Wars had when I was really young, of that sort of that 90s era the early 90s era of the Star Wars, when before the prequels, were announced, and Star Wars was the 3 original movies, and the Star Tours ride at Disney, and just it felt like this much more I can't say smaller scale about Star Wars, because Star Wars has never been small
It's a
scale.
whole galaxy, dude.
Yeah, but there was just something about it from that period of time that felt different compared to when Lucas really opened it up with the prequels and then everything that would follow. So I've always had kind of thoughts and feelings about it since then, about what it means for certain stories to be canon, and then there's so many other territories where that conversation is relevant,
Right.
with like Marvel and even the other Star Trek and stuff. So
Right.
so that all that was kind of what got my brain cooking about this conversation. So I'm glad that we're finally doing it.
That's a good question. What was your first Legends book? Was it the Throng Trilogy?
Well, he's saying Aftermath. That actually is not a Legend
Yeah, it's not.
book.
Aftermath is part of the modern canon.
That's one of the new Disney era canon books. My very first, I'm gonna interchange Legend and Expanded Universe, because it always feels weird for me to say Legend. I haven't gotten used to it, but my first Star Wars book that was part of the Expanded Universe was actually Heir to the Empire is the Throne Trilogy, Shadows of the Empire, which was the book that took place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And when that came out, there was a whole multimedia campaign around it, where it was basically everything that Lucasfilm would throw at promoting a movie, except without the movie.
Right.
There was a book, there was a video game, there was a soundtrack, just everything. And I remember when I was reading that book, I think I read it when I was on vacation with my parents, and I just remember opening the pages of that, and it opens up, you got Darth Vader, you got the Emperor, you got all the core characters, and I could visualize it in my head as if it were a movie. And when I read Luke, I was imagining Mark Hamill in the desert of Tatooine, and it made me so really excited. And so for me, I will always think of that as the sort of the linking piece between those two films. Even though now it's considered not canon, but it's still a great story.
Right. Okay. I forget where that conversation even started.
It was, what was the first Legends
Right.
book?
Nessie, what about you?
Oh, probably it would have to be. I mean, this is going in the Wayback Machine, because I read some of these things when I was a kid. Let's see, 1978, one of the first books that came out after the first trilogy, or when while the first trilogy was happening.
Are you about to say Splinter of the Mind's Eye?
That's the very first Star Wars
God.
Legend book.
That is way back. That's literally the first Star Wars book.
It was written as a sequel to Star Wars, the movie. And I read it in an advanced reading class that I was in. And of course, we had all kinds of nerd books. And I saw that, I zeroed right in on it. I'm like, there's my Huckleberry. And it was so good, because, once again, this was the first foray back into the Star Wars universe after the movie came out. And I was, hungry and thirsty for more. It was also a very well written book. I might add. Alan Dean Foster was great, science fiction writer. And, you dove right back in with, you had Luke, you had Darth Vader, you had, the whole gang was there, and it was like one of his first missions after joining the rebellion.
And
So
it talked about like, because I always like, in these conversations about canon, I always say it's not really as simple as looking in the modern context of these are the works that matter. It's storytelling is an evolving process. And going all the way back to that book, like that's when they didn't even know if the first Star Wars movie would be a success. So
right.
forget more movies. That was sort of, and that was actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was a smaller scale adventure in case they did want to make a sequel, and it would be like a really low budget
Yeah.
sequel, so they could potentially use that as the outline. But like that's when Empire Strikes Back was not in existence yet, and so the canon, quote unquote, was
Yes.
Star Wars, the original film, and that's it.
Yep.
And so yeah,
And this was the first toe outside the door, so to speak. And like I said, it was great. I appreciated having more material to look at. I didn't even consider whether this is canon or not. I'm like, this is a Star Wars story, and I'm reading it, and it's good.
Yeah, because what more can you ask for? You've just seen this, like, first of all, I can't even imagine what it was like to have seen Star Wars as like a new phenomenon. So I would imagine coming off of that, you're just eager for another story with those characters. Yep. And so, yeah, you wouldn't even think about, well, no, let me see if this is proper canon or not. It was coming from, from Lucasfilm, the company, and and that's another thing. Going back to the Throng Trilogy, is at the time that came out, that was published as the authorized continuation of the Star Wars trilogy, and so I know nowadays, again, not classified as official canon, but at the time that it came out, it was considered like, hey, you want more adventures coming after the trilogy, this is it, this is official. Yeah. This is the story to read. And
okay, I'm going to put a stopper in this for a second.
Okay.
We're 15 minutes in, and we've only talked about Star Wars. We haven't even really talked about canon. and it totally slipped by you that I changed shirts on you because I find your lack of beard disturbing.
I was so wrapped up that I didn't even notice, Stephen.
Yeah, I know you've been going off about this, which is great, but like we're missing the target right now, because canon, we're talking about why it should matter and why it shouldn't matter, right? So,
but I think it is an important part of the conversation that
when you're talking about Star Wars, for sure,
that these are great stories, and the fact that they're not in the present day classified as canon does not take away from the fact that they're great stories, and
they are.
And the way that ties in with canon is the fact that, which is my position, that there's a absurd preoccupation in sort of modern media consumption with whether things are canon or not. It becomes almost more important than the storytelling itself.
See, like, this is one of the core topics that I want to talk about today. Phil H says canon matters, or else it's just fanfic, and that, I think, is true when you paint with a broad brush.
Actually, that's one of the types of comments that makes me mad.
I know, but that's why we wanted to have this conversation to begin with. So canon, there are two definitions. I'm going to read the one that applies here: a collection or list of sacred books accepted as genuine. And that has extended into, the fictional sphere. There is a canon for Tolkien. There is a canon for George R.R. Martin's work.
but as far as the canon for Tolkien, that's not even like, if you go through the large volume of History of Middle Earth books, you'll see that paints an evolving, story where many details are different, and the
Right, like
sequence of
what,
events,
like
whole characters are different.
weren't the elves originally gnomes in The Hobbit?
Yeah, but it's got a different. I don't think it's not that they themselves were meant to be different in appearance, but it's just the name had a different connotation for Tolkien, gnome denoting sort of knowledge, and but the name just, it came to represent, like, people think of garden gnomes, that type of thing. So it was changed to elves,
Right.
but
But
they're,
that means a change in the canon because the
yeah.
original story.
And heck, in one of the drafts of Lord of the Rings, one of the early, versions that's laid out in the history of Middle Earth, yes,
Leave it to Dan
you're
to
correct,
come in
Dan.
with the facts on
Yeah,
Tolkien.
factoid. Thank you, Dan.
In one of the drafts of the Lord of the Rings, could be a couple, as a matter of fact, because Tolkien kept going back to the beginning of the story to start over. But in the History of Middle Earth volumes, you see that at one point Aragorn was a hobbit. I think his name was Trotter, instead of Strider. And so if you're looking at
That's
all
a big change.
all of Tolkien's published works, the canon has, a wide range of differences.
I think Joe's got a really great observation here, is that canon matters most when it puts rules on the world's laws of nature to limit the power of protagonists and creates challenges and risks for them as well. I think that's actually a very great observation. So I'll tune it to like Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? There are definitive limitations placed on what they can and can't do, and that show does a really great job of expanding its magic system, bending, in ways that do not break their established canon. They get to do more and more interesting things as time goes on, but they but they remain
Thank you,
within the
John.
rules of what they established before.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's true of all great storytelling, because I'm just gonna pull it on over here into my little realm of the world and talk about mythology, which is some of the oldest forms of storytelling that we have, which has become, quote, in a way, at the time, canon,
Right.
because it was seen as both, things that they believed in, how they explained things happening. But you can also look at these different stories that were told, and you can find a lot of variation, because different writers, and I say writers loosely because this is like when things were first being written down. These stories were told over and over by, the oral tradition for much longer than they had ever been written down. So you had both the tradition of remembering and retelling the tales and learning the tales exactly as they had been told to you, so that you could carry that knowledge forward to the next generations. But also you have the storyteller's license, who at the heart, they're storytellers, and they want to convey an interesting story to their audience. So they may throw in a little extra homage to a certain, ruler if they were telling the story at their table, or they may want to include a different ending if they're trying to say, how do I want to put it? Make a warning or a cautionary tale. So,
Right.
These were long held and sacred traditions, much longer than anything actually written down was. And once these stories were translated into the written text, that's when you kind of start getting the quote canon of them. it written down in, the cuneiform writing for the story of Marduk and Tiamat. Before that, it was just an oral tradition passed on, but now it's on clay tablets, and now this is a story that's been preserved.
Yeah, and now it's
for us to
set in
see.
stone. Granted, it's
It's
clay
literally
and
set
then
in
fire, but
stone. So like the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest stories.
but like the importance of that is that there is an agreed upon set of circumstances that that not only when you're sharing the story, like these are the parts that must be included, but there's also
Right.
like these are the things that must not be included. And just to run it back to Star Wars, like Star Wars has a very complicated relationship with its own canon. Because again, all the films are canon, as there is all
Yeah,
the.
but even the films themselves contradict other films.
I know, like they
You
really
know,
made a
canon.
mess with some of their choices in some of these later films.
Yeah,
Like
I want
Which for me illustrates the futility of getting hung up on canon, because at a certain point you're like,
but like
they
isn't
make these choices because it's the best for the storytelling of the story that's being told. And
but
so
that's not what happened with Star Wars. They said this is when they ignored canon, people went, I don't like that
well, yeah, I mean,
because
I'm arguing that they shouldn't be upset about that.
right. Well,
But
I'm arguing that they were upset, and so
oh no,
that's
that's indisputable.
well,
I'm
but
saying
by
that they should.
extension, that means that it to many people, canon really does matter. Now,
I know
what the
that's a
problem comes in?
gripe of mine.
Okay, we actually scheduled this conversation for this weekend on purpose because what is it, Wednesday? There is a series coming out called Star Wars Visions, which is all Japanese animation
None
houses.
of which is canon.
None of it's
At all.
canon, and I'm going to watch it all.
Isn't it glorious?
It is glorious that this does not have to be beholden to everything else. It's
Right.
like anime with a Star Wars flavor laid on top of it, and I am here for it. But when you make a film and say this film is part of the canon, and then you don't adhere to the canon, that's where people have problems.
Because they have a preoccupation with canon.
Okay, but you can't just say that that's not legit because that is a difference in the way people are perceiving the art.
I didn't say other people couldn't feel that it's legit. I'm just
Right.
saying that I don't.
Okay.
But that's like
I think I think like I'm not against, like, obviously, especially if you're telling, like, if you're in a, if you're telling a story within a single film, that film itself should adhere to the continuity of the story that's being told. I just think that once you're telling a multi-part story, I think it's, if that's the kind of story you're telling, you should, try to the best of your ability to get it to line up with everything. But storytelling is not as simple as, oh, I got to make sure I don't do this, or I got to make sure I check this box. It's organic. So I think that small hiccups in that, like Obi-Wan doesn't recognize R2-D2 in
That's
New
not a big
Hope,
deal.
it shouldn't be something that people get hung up on, because
That I'll agree with.
Yeah.
Miss Man Jones has an interesting point of view. They believe that each fan can create their own canon. That's just what we commonly call a head canon, right? Which is just, which a lot of times is what people will choose to do. Oh, I'm just going to ignore that movie. I famously say, if I'm watching Moulin Rouge, you don't watch the last two chapters on the DVD, so you get the happy ending, and that's canon. But it's really not. That's not how that movie ends. But
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously you shouldn't impose your personal headcanon on somebody else. Um, but I have, like, going ahead and still using Star Wars as an example, I have multiple headcanons for the original trilogy alone.
Okay.
There's like a space in my head for the canon in which the Star Wars trilogy is like a standalone 3-act story.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a headcanon for, George Lucas's 6th film, thing, and then yet another headcanon that incorporates all 9, to the point that when I'm watching, say, those original 3 films, depending on what mood I'm in and what headcanon I'm accessing, things that play out in those films will mean different things to me on that viewing, and it'll like make certain things in my brain sort of click one way or the other.
Right.
I would say a similar thing for the original Alien film. Like, there's times when I'm watching that and I'm incorporating the events of Prometheus into my viewing of that film, and then there's other times when I'm watching it, I'm like, nope, Prometheus doesn't exist. The space jockey is a completely, sort of
Right.
elephant, kind of alien creature that we don't know anything about and we never find anything out about. So, like, yeah, I constantly, for different franchises and stories, have different headcanons constantly sort of running in my head depending on the mood I'm in.
Yeah. I got you. And we all do it. We all like. My favorite one that I think of off the top of my head is from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. The two guys that are always draw the short straw and like they're like best buds.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that is the cutest gay couple I've ever seen in a pirate movie. They are not canonically gay as far as I can tell, but like the subtext is there in spades, and I just like, what a cute gay couple.
Yeah, and there's nothing in the film that
directly
contradicts that or
right.
anything. So,
but I also like Kate's observation here. She thinks that it partially depends on sort of the method of creation. An author creates a distinct world, and that is accurate. George R.R. Martin created Westeros, and everything in those
don't start
books,
her on that, though.
everything in those books belongs to George and his vision, and he gets to say what is and what isn't. And like there are contradictions
within
the books.
Yes.
There's a horse that changes gender, but if you ask me how old is Arya Stark at the beginning of the series, well, in the books she's 8, but in the show she's like 11, because Arya Stark is a character that appears in 2 separate canons. You've got George's books, and you've got the HBO TV show. I enjoyed them both immensely. I can make complaints about things, but
there was something that I always go back to, which was said by Tolkien scholar Brian Sibley, who did the fantastic BBC radio drama adaptation and has written stuff. He said that we now have 2 roads into Middle Earth. Middle Earth as written by Tolkien, and Middle Earth as interpreted by Jackson.
Right.
And that was, and that's pretty much how I like to view adaptations. And so I would say the same thing about A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones.
Right. And I think that's completely legit way to look at it, because it is inspired by, how old is Aegon VI, young Griff? Well, in the books he's what, 15? In the show he doesn't exist. And both are accurate because the canon exists for the purpose of the story you're telling.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you establish the rules and laws and history of what's happening, you can't change that at a later time.
No, there's some things about a story that have to remain.
If you're telling
the
a
same story.
a story that is intended to be part of that ongoing story,
which is
but
what
if you
canon
make a decision to say, well, I'm going to use these certain characters, but I'm going to tell a story now that's outside of the canon.
Okay,
I think there's freedom to do that.
But in what way would all right? So we all agree the original trilogy completely canon, and nobody's going to try to decanonize any of that. Everybody loves the original trilogy of Star Wars. Somebody goes and makes a fan film where they dress up as Darth Maul or Kylo Ren and go to Endor and fight some Jedis there, and then and whatever. That fan film is not canon. That doesn't mean that real artistry didn't go into making it. It didn't mean that I didn't enjoy the hell out of myself watching a really cool lightsaber fight. You want to have your mind blown away? Go look at Scene 38 Reimagined. It's one of the best pieces of Star Wars fan fiction, non-canon, that I've ever seen.
I think I have to admit, I find myself often disappointed with the way that people discuss fan fiction and fan films because they're treated, I think, by a lot of people in such a derogatory fashion. When you have people who love a story and they're inspired by it, and they might actually be very good writers. I know that a lot of authors who now write for Star Wars, in the quote unquote canon, got their start writing fan fiction. And I've read some stuff that really touched me emotionally. It's not canon, but that doesn't mean that the story that I just read didn't.
But where canon is important is for the book you want to write after that is supposed to be a continuation of the story. That's where canon matters.
Yes, but then people will say, but that latter story is more important than the previous story. They say it has more value.
Well, and that's a person's perception, and yes, ODTA knows exactly what I'm talking about. Blind Wave's Kylo Ren fan film is awesome. Met those guys at KirbyCon at the not at KirbyCon, at Con of Thrones, the last Con of Thrones. They were there. I met those guys. They were really cool.
Yeah, Kate. No one's saying that it does make them canon. I'm saying that they can still be incredibly great stories.
I don't think anybody's arguing that they can't be great or enjoyable or absolutely worthwhile or your favorite thing. If your favorite thing in the whole universe is Splinter of the Mind's Eye, well, I don't think you have very good taste, but at least I'm not going to rob you of that being your favorite thing. But Splinter of the Mind's Eye has nothing to do with the next animated series that they want to produce, that they're going to use to expand the canon so that it can then reflect on and further other stories. Canon is important. The Mandalorian brought in Ahsoka Tano and Luke Skywalker, and they needed to be the correct age because that's what age they would be canonically. This is why it's important.
But I would also say that, and we talked a little bit about this earlier today, I think fans of Star Wars should be very careful about what they're labeling now as forever canon, because as easily as Lucasfilm wiped away the prior expanded universe, you watch 20, 30 years down the road, if they don't decide that they want to make some new films that write over some books and comics and things that are written now.
Right.
So, as I said before, it's an ever-evolving thing. In 1991, when Heir to the Empire came out, there weren't a lot of Star Wars books, and there were only the original 3 films.
Right.
So from that perspective, whether or not it was deemed canon at the time, there was nothing to contradict it. So why would your mind wouldn't even go there? So I'm just, I think, and plus those books also belong to another time of Star Wars. If you read them, they read like all that exists of Star Wars is the original trilogy, a couple other books, and Timothy Zahn was pretty much, with the exception of a couple things that I think Lucasfilm said to him, no, don't do that. He was kind of allowed to kind of come up with things out of his own imagination and push forward the story in unique ways that are now contradicted, but that's, we're 30 years down the road from its publication. There's been more stuff to come out, but at the time there wasn't. So that's what I mean when I say that things are always evolving.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just going to make that. I was just going to make that point to sum it up. What you were saying is that canon is a thing that changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hi JP. Nice to see you, buddy. Saw him pop in. And I also want to point out that Miss Van Jones is on your side about the beard. I don't know if you noticed that, but you have at least one beardless John supporter. and Miss Man, I don't want to out you or anything, but I had a conversation with Miss Man Jones the other day about something. And I know you're probably enjoying this particular conversation very much. I know Miss Man is a huge Star Wars fan. But I digress. Yeah, so I'm of the camp that canon matters in the way that it matters and in absolutely no other way.
If the writer or the
sounds like
showrunner,
a cop out, but
well, if the writer says that it matters because they're telling a larger story, then it matters.
Right.
But if you're telling, but it matters in the time that they're telling the story.
It does.
It's yeah. As we've established, so it's never changed anything. But also, if you go off and when I talk about telling stories with with characters, but in a different standalone story, that very much goes into the territory of comic book storytelling, and because there can be an ongoing, canonized,
right,
story, but then there can be other stories that are off to the side that use those characters that has nothing whatsoever to do,
or wholesale reboots.
Yeah,
which happens all the time. That's why comic book fans are a bit ahead of the curve with Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans who have dealt with their own struggles with canon, like with the Kelvin timeline stuff.
we're going to have to talk about my grief with that, but
I have one major complaint about the Star Wars reboot films. Just one.
The Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Star Trek. Yes, I only have really one major complaint.
Well, let's stay on comics for.
Okay, but yeah, comic books. Peter Parker is one of the most Spider-Man, one of the most popular comic book characters of all time. and really resonated with the young audience because he was a kid too. He wasn't already this big buff guy, and he faced normal kid problems like homework and girl trouble and things like that. And that's what made Spider-Man so popular in 1960 something. By the time the 70s rolled around, Peter Parker had grown up. So they needed a way to make a young version of Spider-Man again. And they just got really good at.
Yeah, I saw this example in something. I was reading about this topic the other day. Is like, what's the canon version of Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man? Is it forever being bit by a radioactive spider in the 1960s?
Right.
And do you have to stick to that?
No, you don't.
What? Yeah, exactly.
You don't. But when you're not going to stick to that, you should be clear this does not exist there. I'm going to steer this into comic book movies just a little bit. I assume everyone has seen the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer.
Yes.
Because that's a pretty wild thing to do, where they're taking something that was specifically not canon and bringing it into canon. That's not something you see a whole lot of. Star Wars does it a little bit with the stuff that they made into Legends, and then started sort of cherry picking the best bits to bring into the modern canon.
But this is explicitly saying something that many fans thought was ruled not canon, suddenly saying nope, actually it was all along. Not just the characters. It's not just with Star Wars where they've sort of cherry picked elements from the expanded universe to integrate into. This is saying that no, actually there was a parallel universe that was the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, and potentially the Andrew Garfield ones too.
Well, there are confirmed villains from that timeline. So the Andrew Garfield one exists also. Whether or not we'll see Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield, we don't know. But there are Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, and then is it just Lizard?
Which can I just say, and this is a complete digression, like that was when particularly when and I guess we're talking spoilers, we've already mentioned a couple things when Alfred Molina pops up as Doc Ock, like that is the most, that is this is going to sound derogatory to the MCU. I apologize for that, but seriously, like that is the most excited I've been about like an MCU sort of universe film, just seeing him pop up, because it just those films came out like during my late teens, and so they meant so much to me. So when he comes on, he says, "Hello, Peter," I was like, "Oh!"
You gave the little squee noise, didn't you?
Yeah.
But Marvel has cracked open that whole seal of, hey, we can bring in basically whatever we want now from any and all Marvel universes. So
they can import things from the X-Men film.
See, I completely disagree with this, Kate. I was actually just a little bit let down when I realized that it was going to be that What If was going to be in canon.
Well, it's all in canon because it's multiverse.
Yeah, but I just think it's much more exciting when like, that's why I'm so looking forward to Star Wars Visions, because it's bringing these unique filmmakers in and saying there are no rules for this. Go nuts. What are your feelings about this? Explore that. And for me, that's far more exciting. So.
Okay. I don't know how to. I'm not sure what to say after that. I'm also reading the chat. Um, every time we do a series review or discussion, there is a specific canon for the discussion, limited by the minimum of episodes watched by the panel. Though some have watched ahead. That is a very astute observation,
Yeah.
Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And that is important for us to know what we're talking about. Like, we are talking about this, we're not talking about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, just think about, like, when we watch the first 3 episodes of something, our brains are firing with all the possibilities that we imagine as a result of what we've seen. That is our headcanon at that moment. And that changes after we've seen the next batch of episodes.
Yeah.
Right.
Or whether we've watched a series that we've read the books over. Just because something is canon in the books doesn't mean you're going to see it on the small screen, or you may see a version of it, but it may not play out exactly the same way as it did on page. I mean, we saw that when we were.
It doesn't need to, because they're building a canon can only exist within a single story. That's what I'm saying. What is and is not canon is what's in this story and what's outside this story. So, like this Star Wars Visions, it's going to have things like samurais and lightsabers and force wielders and droids and spaceships and all that stuff, but it's not going to influence or be forced to be influenced. Like, it doesn't have to follow the history at all. It's not going to affect the future of the storytelling in the Star Wars universe.
I think we might see it follow.
That is okay.
I think we might see it follow some of the history,
but
because
it doesn't have to. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to.
Because I'm just saying, based on some images I've seen and certain characters who do appear to be in some of the installments. So I think there may be, loose references to some things, but you're absolutely right as far as, like, it's not going to influence what's established as the sort of Star Wars storyline proper, if you will.
Right. So these are all stories from the what is that? Oh man, you're gonna revoke my Star Wars fan card. The western side of the galaxy, where nobody can go, and
the unknown regions.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all these can take place in the unknown regions, or they're just cool stories with lightsabers and force users and droids and spaceships, and I want that. I love Star Wars. Give me Star Wars stories. If it's not going to, it's nice for me to go ahead of time that these particular stories, if something's like that doesn't make sense because Obi-Wan blah blah blah, or Yoda said this and that means that, you can throw that out the window. It doesn't matter.
So I want to ask, since we're back on the topic of the Star Wars, because this is interesting within the realm of Star Wars specifically, given the fact that this was a story that started in the mind of George Lucas, and he had direct control over it for a great number of years. Who is it that deems something canon? Because if we, I know some people who, whose name might start with the letter K. I've heard said that canon is according to the creator of a story. So if that's in the case of Star Wars, if that's George Lucas, then nothing after he sold the company would be canon. But because these are stories that are officially licensed by Lucasfilm,
that's why the answer isn't the creator. The answer to that question is the license holder.
Which is why I go back to the Throng Trilogy, which was deemed the authorized continuation of the Star Wars saga. It may not have come from Lucas himself, but that was coming from the company for a period of time. And then almost 25 years down the road, they said, no, actually, we're changing that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can look at it that way of being. He was involved in the 6 films. He was involved in Clone Wars. Outside of that, he's had no involvement with anything else. So
Yep.
if you look at it from that perspective, then nothing else is canon. But there's a lot that's freaking enjoyable all the same.
That's a Cloaked One's got a great question. More of a language question, but if Visions isn't canon, what do we call it? Non-canonical?
Call it Star Wars Visions.
Yeah, call it. Well, if something is canon or it's not canon. I mean, I don't know what else I would call it, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, a vision is something that a person sees, possibly not with their conscious mind, but with their unconscious mind, in their mind. It's a vision. It's not like sitting in front of them. Like I'm looking at, this drink cup with my vision, but with my vision, I'm imagining things, or I'm seeing the possibilities of things. It doesn't necessarily make them true. Doesn't necessarily make them untrue. They're just in the realm of possibility.
And see, Dan has hit upon it exactly.
Yeah, he really has.
Right. If you're willing to call anything post Disney sale canon, that it only has validity in the sense that the rights holders say that it's canon.
Mm-hmm. But
why can't you just say you enjoyed this story and that's why it's dear to you?
Okay, but why does it? But it sounds to me like you're trying to obliterate the idea of canon to begin with.
No, I'm trying to obliterate people's fixation on it.
Okay, but nobody here is fixated on it. You're fixated on getting everybody else to stop fixating on it. That's the thing that's happening here.
Okay, you won, John. Nope.
Yeah, people are agreeing. It is a very legalistic way of looking at it to say, well, they hold the license, but what other? So Dan, who holds the license to Tolkien's works? It's the Tolkien estate. They're the ones that decide what is canon. Although I will say, when you are working with a single author, even after they die, you cannot change what Edgar Allan Poe wrote or what H.P. Lovecraft wrote. That is in place, and no one, you can't sell the H.P. Lovecraft license. Actually, all of his creatures and stuff are public domain.
I think actually it's funny. I think this was exactly the reason, and Dan can correct me on this because he would probably be know more of the details about this than I can remember. But I know that Christopher Tolkien, who of course is Tolkien's son, changed his approach to publishing his father's works after the Silmarillion. I think with the Silmarillion, he was a bit more liberal about how he edited the story into, a cohesive, full work. I think he didn't quite feel good about the way he did that, and that's why all the subsequent books that came out are very much publishing what his father completely 100% wrote with then notes in between, talking about it rather than trying to piece things together where he would have to use maybe some of his own writing to fill in the gaps. I mean, I like having a Silmarillion that feels like it's telling full tales, or as full as they can be, in the Silmarillion, which, you know, I always say is kind of like the Reader's Digest of these great mythologies. But yeah, it's, so I think even he was like, no, I want to make sure that what's getting put out there is 100% my father. And so that's interesting as far as, you know, like what's Tolkien canon. I think there's been, you know, I've read some debates on that about, you know, what percentage of the Silmarillion is pure Tolkien and what has a little bit of Christopher's influence in there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, there's not an easy answer, I guess, to the Tolkien question, at least. But let's just make it the George R.R. Martin question. What's canon in A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, it's in the books.
Yeah,
You know,
it's what he wrote. You know,
and when he passes away, however much he has or hasn't written, like, that's the canon,
That's it.
and nobody else can change that.
I always do find it humorous when people talk about this. The same conversations were had when the Hobbit movies came out. Like, people say, and to be honest, this ends up being true of a lot of adaptations. People say, like, you know, you've completely torn out pages and rewritten them. It's like, no, they didn't actually go into every bookstore and tear out, you know, the pages of Tolkien's The Hobbit and write over it. They made a filmed adaptation, which differs.
It differs in a lot of ways.
And whatever you want to think of that adaptation, it doesn't erase the book, which is
right.
As far as Tolkien's actual story, that is the literary canon of that story.
Right. I totally agree. Like, the story of The Hobbit, when you say The Hobbit, I think of the book. Now, if you say The Hobbit films, okay, now you're talking about something else.
Yeah.
And that's a story that has, oh God, I can't even think of Evangeline Lilly's character in that
Arya.
film. Yeah. But, like, character doesn't exist, except it does in those films. And if you wanted to make, and whatever she did in film 3, she's still answering to the things that were already done in film 2 and film 1.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the canon of that particular story. But it doesn't change the book, The Hobbit. Just enjoy The Hobbit. Read it. Imagine Martin Freeman, if you want to, because he's great. Like, best part of that film, of those films, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I will say, like, side note, anybody who wants like the best of both worlds, Andy Serkis's new audiobooks of both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings pretty much take elements, you know, from those films as far as like voices and some of the music, the tunes and stuff like that, but it's pure Tolkien because he's reading. So if anybody is interested in that type of thing, go ahead and check out those audiobooks because they're pretty good.
This is an interesting conversation I would like to have after the mid-roll, but thank you, Cloaked One, for looking this up. Canon is material accepted as officially part of the story in an individual universe of that story by its fan base. Which completely ignores the legal rights or the creator. So canon being determined by the fans is something we haven't even quite got to yet. But
I do not agree with that.
Well, I think it's worth cashing out and maybe devil's advocating some. But we'll get to that after the mid-roll. All right?
Yeah.
So this is the part where, don't go away. We still got an hour left. But hit the like and subscribe if you haven't liked, if you're not subscribed, please do those things. I like watching numbers go up. It's cool. I want to shout out our patrons because they're awesome. Our Patreon High Council is Ridiculous Ed Tollett, aka Sean, aka our Alpha Patron. Thank you, buddy. We love you. High Council also consists of Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder, and the lovely Lady Leaf Underhill. And they are escorted by the lords and ladies of the realm, including Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, this wonderful person who just wandered in, Reflective Rambling, and our very own Arch-Maester Emma. Thank you, patrons. We love you guys very much. So, John, talk to me about the YouTube channel, John Webster Film.
Yeah, it's pretty much on hold for right now. I've been going through some stuff, and I just haven't lined anything up. So, yeah, but I hope to have some stuff on the horizon. But I don't have any new news right now.
Okay, no new news. Nessie, new news?
No new news.
Man, you guys are slacking. I know I keep you busy though. I know I keep you busy.
Well, I mean, plague and everything.
Right. It'd be what it is. What it is. It'd be like that sometimes. But yeah. So we have nothing on the schedule for next week, but we have a lot of different things we could talk about. We are in the middle of watching 2 series right now, 2 animated series. We also have done some of What If. Some people were asking if we're going to get back to that. We also have Star Wars Visions coming out on Wednesday, and so I think I want to throw this to the chat and see what they want.
I mean, speaking for myself, I know I'm very conflicted because on the one hand, if Nessie's not going to be able to join us next week, I know that we said we were going to do Avatar season 3 with her.
Yep.
And then if we do Rebels, I don't want her to miss out on the season 2 discussion. I really don't.
So. Don't worry about me, guys. I'm happy to talk about any of the things we've got upcoming. As much as I love season 3, Avatar is so good. If you guys want to just round out your discussions on that'll be fine. It won't hurt my feelings. I'm good. Don't worry about it. Whatever the chat wants, I'm good either way.
Yeah. So I'm just going to throw it to the chat. Should we talk about Visions? Should we talk about some What If? Should we Avatar: The Last Airbender? Star Wars Rebels? I really want Nessie to be there for Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's somebody else that wants to be there for it too. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but I'll look in my messages and figure it out. Can't remember. Okay, I see a vote for Visions. And while you guys are thinking about it or weighing in, I'll also tell you I have a second channel. And it's called Here Be Games. There's a link down in the description, and on that channel I play video games. I am just started a playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, which is my favorite video game of all time, where I am playing as myself, wandering the wasteland and trying to survive. And I can't let this go. It is International Talk Like a Pirate Day today. So, Arya scallywags, lash a scurvy dog to the yardarm and keel haul you to the... I ran out of pirate words, but matey.
I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request. Sorry, that's my Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Okay.
Yeah, well, everyone should see that coming.
I've got a pirate cannon. Thank you for pointing that out, Kate. So I saw another vote for Visions. Okay, maybe that's what we'll do, John.
Well, here's the thing, though. how many are they putting out?
There's
Because
9 episodes, and I think they are all dropping at once.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
Are
so
they?
we might
Okay.
do like pick a few of them.
Okay, that's fine then. I thought they were just going to do one a week, in which case I don't think we could. that would be a bit of a stretch because they're fairly short each one.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and I want to double check on that.
I'm not 100% sure.
Yep, then they're all
All
they're all dropping on the 22nd.
Okay,
So.
I thought so. I thought that's what I'd heard. So we'll get together and figure it out.
Okay, yeah, that's great because I feel like it's a natural progression. We're having this conversation about canon, and then
we'll talk about something not canon.
Totally uncanon. Just play in the sandbox. Yep.
Maybe the first 4 or 5. I think that's probably a good idea because, like, the first, at least as they're listed in there, maybe that's the good way to do it. Because there's no way to know.
Well,
and to tell everybody else how much to watch either, you know.
Well, let's wait and see. Let's when it drops, and then we can make a call because remember, as I said, they're all quite short. I think.
Yeah, the problem with that is how do we tell our viewers what to watch this week?
Watch everything.
Okay, but not everybody can do that. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that. That's why.
I mean, if they're like 15 minutes apiece, then.
But are they 15 minutes apiece?
I think it's like 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
It's like the average. I mean, they're really short.
Okay. Then I guess we're talking about all of it, or all of it's fair game. Anyway, you're not being helpful on this one, are you?
Watch Visions. They'll talk about some of it or all of it.
Because if there's like 30 minutes, like Cassie says, like that's 4.5 hours, and not everybody can watch that. Anyway, maybe that's not the best time. Maybe we push it back a few weeks to give everybody time to watch all of it.
Well, no, I'd rather go ahead and split it up, and you know.
Okay, we'll cover the first 5.
Okay,
that's half. Unless 5 and 6 are a 2-parter, then we'll cover the first 4. We'll all figure it out together on Wednesday. Now, I'm with you, Cassie. It's tough to keep up with everything. All right, I think that's the mid-roll. Is there something else?
I don't know. Is that canon, Stephen? Is that weird?
Oh, Google says between 13 and 22 minutes. Okay, that's not too bad. But still, we'll cover like the first 5. That's an hour and a half to 2 hours. Y'all ought to be able to handle that.
So everybody's got their homework.
And we're basically just been covering a lot of animated stuff, which is why I was really glad to do this. It's fun to have a conversation outside of just a single piece of media sometimes. And we've done conversations not exactly like this, but in that vein before. And I kind of want to ask, the chat, we cover a lot of pop culture, and we're covering a lot of animation and TV shows and whatever's out on Disney Plus. But what else would you like to see us talk about? Because this conversation is one that John has been itching to have, because you want to make sure that your thoughts on this were known. And
I want to make sure I set everybody else straight.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm trying to be more diplomatic about it than that, But
I told you John had his fighting beard on today.
Hey, man, I'm here for it. Like, but and we've had conversations like like with why fandom matters and things like that, which are things that I wanted to talk about. But you know, Here Be Dragons is a community. A lot of people who are in the chat right now have been on the channel as a guest. Not all of them, but several have. And for the record, chatters, the door is pretty much always open to you guys too. If we're talking about something, if you have an idea, like bring it to us. We'll talk about it. If you want to be a guest, come on, come do the thing with us. Come hang out. It'll be fun. But to be honest, I don't know what our next sort of like not talking about a TV show conversation will be, you know? So it seems like we're going to talk about some visions next week. The week after that, you want to wrap up Avatar?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So that's two, because I really want you to get to the end of that show, and then I kind of want to get back to Rebels too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But Avatar is so good that I want you to get to the end of it, because the end is so good.
Okay.
I just want you to have seen it already, you know. Anyway,
there's a line from the TV show Angel that I quite like. Hey, if nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do.
It's a good one. It's a good line. It's confusing, but like if you pick it apart philosophically, it's got some meat on that bone. Okay, so let's head fully back into the canon conversation. The last thing that was brought up, I can't remember who it was, but they brought up that Wikipedia says that canon is determined by the fan base.
Yeah, and I completely disagree with that.
Okay, now play devil's advocate for a minute.
Wait, doesn't that mean I would have to come up with an argument to agree with that?
Yes, that is exactly what it means. Were you not in the debate?
I can't contemplate.
Yeah,
agreeing with that, because then if it's up to the fan base, no, if it's up to the fan base, then that's completely in conflict with what they say canon is supposed to be, an established storyline. If it's just
okay, but here's what canon is: a collection or list of sacred books accepted as genuine. Accepted.
Thank you.
Accepted.
So
accepted. Like, if a large group of people agrees that a thing is canon, whether or not somebody else says it is, can mean less within that community. So maybe a canon can be held by a fan base, although like I might determine that as a separate canon from. Okay, take for instance A Song of Ice and Fire. There are a lot of people who think Tyrion is secretly a Targaryen.
Okay, that doesn't make it canon.
You're right, but it doesn't make it not. It's not proven one way or the other. But if a group of people wants to read the book and interpret it that way, collectively, their canon can be. I mean, I guess.
No, that goes back to what Kate was saying
like
in the chat.
Look, I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
That's theorizing. I'm theorizing does not make something
play
canon.
devil's advocate, since you can't do it.
Wars have been
I'm not doing a
started
very good job at it, apparently.
over canon. Okay?
I can't even convince myself.
In the strictest sense of the word, canon means these are sacred texts. Nothing that is put out in modern media or not modern media, in media, is sacred text. Okay?
Right.
Unless you want to go found a religion, which is your right as a human being, based on Star Wars or A Song of Ice and Fire or the works of Tolkien. Unless you're out to go set up a religion, it doesn't matter, because it's not canon. It is not a sacred religious text. Therefore, it is completely open to interpretation. Unless you want to have start wars over this stuff, because that's how we got wars in the Middle East for the last 2,000 years. So, don't take canon so seriously.
Right. Like, there are people who put way too much stock in it. I am absolutely willing to agree to that. But I also think that it's a tool, like any other tool. It is used to help craft a story. But much like a hammer is a tool, you do not unscrew things with a hammer. You use it for its intended purpose, which is to inform the next chapter of the story, and that's what it's good for. And having a well-established canon lets the readers experience the world in a more immersive way, because they know that the history doesn't change. They know that the laws of nature, the rules of how your magic work, don't change. That's why it is important, because it allows for a deeper immersion and allows for a consistent world that you've built. But beyond that, like, saying something isn't canon, okay, there's a lot of people out there that write fanfic and read fanfic and love it, and there's probably a few fanfic writers in the chat right now. And is that canon? No, it's not. But like, that does not diminish what they get from writing or reading those stories. Not at all. And perhaps because they love these characters so much, and then they're placed in the context of a story that has the story elements that they didn't get, be that, people who ship John and Satin and want to write a fanfic about their love affair. Like, George's not going to give that to you, but you've got two characters you love, and now they're also engaging in the activity that you wanted to see them in. That is genuinely valuable artistic expression and genuinely valuable artistic consumption, but it's not canon. Okay, Matthew Dominique, just as sort of answering what we said earlier, so generally we don't do a lot of stuff that's not new or How to Train Your Dragon is a little bit outside what we would normally do, but I'm also going to say it's got dragon in the title, so that I'm way more likely to do something that has dragon in the title.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would fit over here, and if you don't think it fits, I'm more than happy to go ahead and do that on John Webster Film, because I actually really love that movie.
So, I love that movie too, especially and they're all good. They really are. So yeah, Matthew, that is definitely a possibility.
Hey, we make the rules here.
We do.
This is our canon.
Like, it's got dragon in it.
Why not?
Hey, you picked a weak spot for me.
We'll have to put that up for a movie review one night.
Yeah. Matthew's got another good.
Yeah, I do think that anything that involves dragons forever, that's the loophole. That's
yeah.
It's always a leg up for sure.
All you have to say is, but there's a dragon, then we're like,
but there's a dragon in it.
Yeah.
Please don't ask me to do a review of Reign of Fire.
I will tell you.
It's not the worst movie in the world, but
I will tell you though, I was dragged to that movie one night after work, I think, and I have never laughed. I'm not going to say never, but I have seldom laughed out loud more than I did at the end of that film with the big moments. I think everybody.
Oh yeah, with the leap.
Yeah, that was great. It's it doesn't make it a good movie at all.
I mean, it's not a bad movie, but it's not a good movie either.
Yeah, it's just sometimes you just. Like even I have
popcorn movie.
Even I have fun, with those sort of goofy movies that.
I'm just saying, if it's got a dragon in it, your chances are good. If it's Reign of Fire, your chances are not as good.
I mean, eventually we'll get to Dragonheart. I mean, there is a dragon in there.
Well, I'm gonna say I'm gonna call dibs on that one just
Yeah.
because if I don't have that on my channel and invite Micah on for it, he will kill me. So
You will.
John, that requires you to do stuff on your channel.
this is true.
I was about to say, I mean, you can't hold dibs forever, my friend. There's a statute of limitations on dibs. But yeah, Micah would have to be involved in that in some kind of way because he's been begging for that movie, probably over a year now.
Okay, but let's move back to canon. But yeah, Star Wars meets dragons.
So you want to
Great dragons.
You want to steer the conversation over to Star Trek canon?
Yes, actually, because I think it's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Because Star Trek has a long history with canon.
It does, and actually, it was a couple weeks ago, John. You and I were talking in preparation for this stream specifically about Star Wars canon and why my problems that I had with the films, and like you talked me in enough of a circle that you kind of changed my mind on some of it because I came to realize that I was being one of those fans of like it's not what I wanted. And like,
yeah, okay.
You don't owe me what I want. That. You owe me.
So, are you talking about the reboot? The reboot.
When you're creating a piece of art, you do not owe the consumer of that art anything.
Yeah, I'm in the camp. You can choose whether you like it or not.
Right. And I do, on the whole, enjoy those films, but some of my complaint about it did boil down to it's not what I wanted from new Star Trek, and that's not what they don't owe me that though. They don't owe me what I want.
I will say there were a couple points I wanted to raise, which I thought it was really interesting. Because a couple of years ago, I was listening to the audio commentary on Star Trek First Contact. And Ronald D. Moore, who wrote that film with, I think, with Brandon Braga, and Ronald D. Moore, of course, is the guy who went on to do Battlestar Galactica.
Of course.
And he was talking about how much of a weight the Star Trek canon was on, like, whenever you're looking to write a story, because there's so much history and different stories, especially during that era of when First Contact came out, because you had all these different, sort of factions of Star Trek going on with the different shows. And he said at some point, somebody's just going to have to wipe the slate clean and start over, and whether that's telling a fresh story of the original crew or Next Generation, whatever, because the canon is so overpowering, where you have to make sure you're not bumping up against this, bumping up against that.
Mm-hmm.
And then lo and behold, that's exactly what ended up happening. They want to go back and tell a story of young Kirk, young Spock, and but of course
there was too much already established for them to just tell the story.
But of course, my gripe comes in with the manner in which they did it, which I know that there are, I'm sure, plenty of Star Trek fans who want everything to somehow stay in canon. So they probably were like, no, this is fine. But the fact that they went through all that maneuvering of this is an alternate timeline, it was like, it's too awkward for me. It's like, if you want to start over, just start over.
Right.
Well,
and honestly, I have a problem, and it is a canon problem with the new Star Trek films. Okay. I don't mind the time travel and all that, but like, you meet Kirk, he's a white guy from Iowa, because Kirk's a white guy from Iowa. Spock, Uhura, Sulu, all these characters are the same in sort of like obviously not the same actors, but they are intended to be literally the same people that were already established by previous actors.
Yes.
My complaint is with Khan, because Khan, as played by Ricardo Montalban, first of all, is a physically imposing specimen, a big, buff dude. And as much as I love Cumberbatch, and he's great, he is not a big, buff dude. And he is also a white dude, not a Mexican actor who was playing a Indian actor.
Whatever, yeah.
But he was, he's a person of color, and they sort of gave it.
They actually even did a comic at the same time that the film was coming out that explained that he underwent some kind of operation or whatever. Guy? Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying it's not extremely problematic, but
right.
But no, I actually agree on that point, because of as much I actually really like Cumberbatch in
do
the
too.
role.
He's a great actor.
But the problem is that, and this goes back to what I was saying, like, if you want to start over from scratch, just start over from scratch. But he should have been the same guy.
Yes.
So it should at least, he should look and act like Ricardo Montalban's interpretation of the character, if this is in the same universe but just a skewed timeline.
Right. Because that character is actually from the 90s and been in hypersleep and all that.
Exactly.
And I will also say, like, you want to put Benedict Cumberbatch in a movie? Great. Don't call him Khan. Make him someone else.
But if you do that, Stephen, you also close the door on those roles they're locked into those, that means you'll never get a black Captain Kirk. If you lock it like that.
But we got Cisco.
This again is why I'm like, they should have just forget the alternate timeline, just start over. Then you can cast whoever you want in any of the roles.
I mean, like the Hamilton effect.
Yeah.
But when you make everybody else in the story more or less, I mean, obviously they're different actors, but white Russian guy, Japanese guy, white guy from Iowa, black woman who's a communications expert, like they all slot into the same thing. And then Khan is just, we want Benedict Cumberbatch. Man, just make him someone else.
It really did stick out sorely,
Well, and part of that, like, I mean, no matter how you slice it, it just, whatever their reasons for it are, whatever their reasons were, rather, the end result just not gonna look good, like, at all. But
John, I don't want to gloss over this. Joe S thinks you're right. And anytime somebody like just thinks you're right, I
because it happens so few times.
Exactly. You understand.
I do know that for that story they were looking to conceal that it was Khan, but you still could have gone any number of different directions other than plain white guy.
Right.
Pasty white dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to throw shade on Cumberbatch. Like, he took a job. He was not blowing up yet quite at that point in his career. Like, he was known, but he wasn't blown up yet. And it's Star Trek, man. I'm one in, but yeah,
I think his work, his actual work in the film is really good. It's I don't consider it his fault that it's just wasn't a very good decision.
Yeah, but, like you said, call him something else because it was different enough.
Actually, that film was monumentally better the whole time he was being called Harrison, up until the moment he's revealed as Khan.
Yeah. Anyway,
So,
I'm gonna beat this to death. But I will say, other than that, I don't mind the Kelvin timeline. I've enjoyed all three of those films. They don't affect the Prime timeline, and that's fine. They don't need to. They're their own canon, and that's what canon is. Canon is.
but they were trying to have their cake and eat it too.
They were.
It's where they can do whatever they want, but also it's a timeline that's diverging from the main like original Star Trek timeline. So it's still all within canon. I just think it was. I don't know that
it's two
was
separate
necessary.
canons because they were like. My little brother is a huge Star Trek fan, but he will talk about it Prime timeline, Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, but it's all within the same. It's two different timelines, but it still exists within the same overarching story.
It does, but they still have separate canons because they are on separate timelines.
Yeah,
they're the same up to the point where they actually split. I'm going to lose both of you with this, but somebody in the chat.
I want to throw this.
Yeah. Yeah, he was great, and gone too soon. But
I actually was just revisiting parts of Star Trek Beyond about a week or so ago, and I saw him, and I was like, oh man, he was so good, and he also did some great voice work in a show that Jolie has been trying to get us to cover, which is Troll Hunters. He voiced the main character in the first season of that. Okay. And what I saw of it, he did a great job. But yeah.
I lost my point that I was about to make.
You said you were going to lose us on something.
Oh yeah. So, and this is part of the canon conversation. I'm just going to throw out some words, and somebody in the chat's going to get this. Full Metal Alchemist. When you talk about the canon for Full Metal Alchemist, that can be kind of nuts because there is a manga called Full Metal Alchemist. There is an anime called Full Metal Alchemist that was written following the manga up to the point where they got past the manga, and then they just did whatever the hell they wanted. Then there's a show called Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which follows the manga completely, but obviously makes some changes because of the change of medium. So Full Metal, like, what is canon in Full Metal Alchemist? There's 3 different answers to that, even though it's the story of the teen years of the Elric brothers. Like, you can have 3 different answers depending on if you're talking about the old anime, the new anime, or the manga on which it's based.
That's true of a lot of things, Stephen.
Yeah.
Especially when they're going from, especially like a graphic novel genre to then bringing it to screen or animation or live action or what have you. Yeah, you're going to have that. You see that a lot. We saw it in Umbrella Academy, where there's the Dark Horse comic version of it, and then there's what Netflix gave us. I mean, there were obvious differences, which is fine. Like them both. It's great entertainment. I mean, I don't know that there's like a huge legion of fan, screaming about canon about that, but not like Star Wars or Star Trek. Those are and Marvel. Those are the big 3 juggernauts in nerd culture media today. Maybe is that a good way of putting it? Those are the juggernauts. Those are the ones that are putting out massive amounts of material that are being consumed voraciously by millions and millions of people. So those where you get those opinions. When you have too many opinions, it's like a piece of the anatomy.
And there is one more thing I want to bring up. We're getting, maybe 20, 25 minutes till the end. but something that somebody said earlier, I saw it go by in the chat, and maybe it was a couple of people. They brought up the fact that sometimes the canon conversation is really a hidden front for a conversation about gatekeeping.
Gatekeeping.
You know, which
Yeah.
is using a hammer to figure out who's your friend. You know, like if you go back to my metaphor about it being a tool, it's used for a specific thing. But when you're using it to decide who's cool enough to be in my Star Wars club, you know, I'm not interested in that use. I think that's incredibly toxic. I'm not for gatekeeping in general. People like what they like. You can be a Star Wars fan and all you've ever seen is episode 2 of the films, and that's it. But you loved it, you're a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Now, there are probably people who have a greater investment emotionally in Star Wars than the person that's only seen episode 2 and nothing else. But that doesn't make them not a fan.
Exactly.
It makes them focused on one specific part of the narrative. Anyway.
Well,
There's
you brought that up in-
2 canons, Kate. There's 2 canons.
Yeah.
you brought
So
that up in
again, I think this is a loaded question because the canon, there isn't a the canon, because part of the definition of canon is it exists for the specific story, and the book and the show are telling us different stories. An adaptation of a book is not the same as the book. It's a different medium. By necessity, it's a different story. They're going to do things differently. Like, I don't know how you hear tra-la-la-lally in your head from Tolkien, but, you know, when they made a cartoon out of that, they wrote a song, and there's music, and people have voices and appearances, and, you know, the book canon is it for itself, the canon, but I think asking which canon is the canon is a question that doesn't really have an answer.
Yeah, that's...
At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, and can you imagine the elves of the films going tra-la-la-la-lally?
Yeah, I can, and it's awesome. Legolas and Elrond and Arwen.
just hanging out at the dinner table.
Galadriel, like they all come together as an a cappella group.
Oh yes. It would have been majestic.
It's the Tolkien pitch perfect crossover we all wanted. No? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I'm here for it. I would have adored it.
Yeah, but Cassie, have you read this book? It's canon. I've read very little Dragonlance, to be honest with you.
Actually, I have.
And here's John.
Yeah, I did read quite a few of them. I think I remember I had read. Let's see. There's the original trilogy, then there's the subsequent trilogy that followed Raistlin and his brother, and then I think
Raistlin and Caramon Majir.
Yeah, and then there was a book of short stories. Then there was a bigger book that I think a lot of people didn't like, but it was canon because it did things that they weren't happy about. Does that sound like any movie that came out in the past few years? And then there was another trilogy after that. And I know that there have been countless books beyond that, but I think those were the ones that I read. But so I read a nice chunk of them, for sure.
I read the first 3. And that's it.
I've
that's
read
as far as I'm going.
I've read a couple of them. I don't remember. Dragonlance wasn't my setting.
Well,
Forgotten Realms was my setting. So Icewind Dale, Drizzt Do'Urden, Elminster. Yeah.
The thing was, there was a time before A Song of Ice and Fire, before my reading of A Song of Ice and Fire, where I was adrift looking for something to satisfy that Lord of the Rings craving that I had. And Dragonlance ended up being
good.
It.
It just wasn't mine. Dragonlance has some really cool characters in it, though. Raistlin's awesome. got eyes like hourglasses, and he can see.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a curse, and Lord Soth is such a sad story. And anyway, I digress. Kate's over here trying to like get a better definition of canon and continuity, and I see you, Kate. Like,
Stephen, she and I have had a 10-hour conversation
I
about
know.
this, and
I know
and
that's
there
why she
is
was-
no end to it.
That's why she was not invited on. I
Sorry,
love you, Kate, but like
You
Nessie
got
and I
a
would get
sampling.
worried
You
likewise.
got a sampling of the kind of conversation we would have, and you were like, "Hell no!"
Yeah, but you have to understand with Kate, and she said this, the argument is the point.
Yes, like debate team, you know.
You know, if you never get it, I mean, great if you get an answer, but if you don't get an answer, well, that's just more to pick apart and analyze and catalog in that librarian brain of hers, that bibliophile. Oh, yeah, she's so smart with books. Sorry.
Well, you know, I think that there's a lot of value in the, because I've been keeping up with the chat. I think there's a lot of value in a lot of the things people are saying. Specifically, I'm going to shout out Joe S. and Kate have both been just like dropping knowledge bombs. Reflective Rambling's been getting in there too, but yeah, there's been some healthy conversation on the topic. Not that everybody hasn't thrown in on the topic to some degree or other, but yeah, I really enjoy. I really love it when people in the chat have their takes that add to the conversation. Yeah. See, Sean agrees. He thinks that there should be more singing and poetry in the films. Although there's probably more than a lot of us remember.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like they threw in more of the singing in the Hobbit films, and there was a large portion of the audience who were not like obsessive Tolkien fans who hated that, like the whole bit with the dwarves singing in Bad Yen, which was a scene I loved. I actually think the whole Bad Yen sequence is one of the better sequences of those films, and I loved the song. But I remember reading reviews who were like, it turns into a freaking musical all of a sudden.
It does not turn into a musical all of a sudden.
See, if they put more in the first trilogy, it wouldn't have been such a thing in the second trilogy. Just, one song, maybe.
Yeah, it's not like they had a choreographed dance number.
But that's what I'm saying.
Like,
I mean,
sing.
I'm just saying that there was a sizable portion of that audience who would not have wanted too much of that. I think that they got in a lot of the music of Middle Earth through Howard Shore's scores, actually. And I think that was very impressive the way they wove that in.
Yeah, well, more poetry would have been cool.
More poetry would have been cool.
Yeah, I think that may have been a little bit better accepted, but yeah, more poetry would have been great. It's great lines, man.
And just like, don't get me wrong, Howard Shore's score is beautiful, but at least one rock anthem would have been really nice.
No.
Yeah.
Got him.
You did.
I don't care if you're trolling me or not, okay? I will freaking go off on you for comments like that, Stephen.
Told you.
Here's the thing. That was the intended response. So, like, you've actually played directly into my hands. See, Kate
But
gets
Stephen,
Kate gets
in
it.
your head canon,
Oh, what a shock.
Yeah. Oh, look, another person John disagrees with.
I mean, all we need is Aaron in the chat, and we would have the trifecta.
Okay, anyway.
I know
I
Aaron.
was
I know
gonna say,
Aaron likes to disagree with me, but she would be completely in my corner on this one. So
Yeah, on this one, you're likely correct. Okay,
yeah.
guys, we're down to the last little bit. Does anybody? There's been some great conversation in the chat. If you've got any final thoughts about why canon matters and why it doesn't, or a related idea, you know, have your say. John, you want to sum up your point of view? Nessie, you want to sum up your point of view?
well, it's
Uh,
funny because I didn't even get into my feelings on why I think that the sort of preoccupation with canon and things lining up perfectly has sort of led to our modern obsession with cinematic universes and all that stuff. But that's okay. I'll leave that because that would have just probably led to more argumentation. Uh, but I will say that I like the conversation we had because it wasn't like I know I kind of teased the conversation as I was going to say canon doesn't matter at all.
right.
It's a bit more nuanced than that, and I definitely agree that if that's the kind of story you're telling, that which is dependent upon um, established, not just established rules, but established like story points and things, it is important to keep that going, but also that it shouldn't define what is or is not a good story.
Right.
So
Canon is not a yardstick for measuring what's good. It's a hammer for building the next installment. That's how I see it.
yeah, and
Uh,
I will say I did want to on the topic, circling back around to Star Wars, which is that I was watching a fan film actually, which was put out a couple of years ago, which was a short film about Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's I think it's even called like Kenobi, a Star Wars story, and it has, for a fan film, it's got great production value. And actually, the fans who did it even got James Arnold Taylor, who did the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the in Clone Wars and a little bit of Rebels, to actually appear as an Imperial officer in this
oh, nice.
film. And so it's really well done, and I think it is called Kenobi, a Star Wars story. So look that up. I think it's on YouTube. Just like that type of thing, it's a great thing to watch because it shows like people who love Star Wars, expressing their love and telling a story that's never going to be canon.
Yeah,
But there's value in it
yeah, absolutely.
because people came together to celebrate their love of something.
Yep.
Well,
Nessie,
maybe maybe Dave Filoni will see it and invite him onto his team, and they can make Star Wars stuff. Like, Dave Filoni watches YouTube. I'm sure he does.
yeah. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave. Make Darth Maul and Kira. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay. Nessie, I want your sort of like nutshell thoughts. We're gonna get off the rails again, and now is not the time for that.
Okay. My nutshell thoughts is even the Bible isn't canon if you go by it's not contradicting itself, because it contradicts itself all the time. So take that with a grain of salt. It's you don't have canon is like the framework, like Stephen was saying. It's the points here and there that we got to touch these things. We touch all these things to tell this story.
Touch those things.
And touch those things and these ones and those over here. But maybe not in the same way. Switch it up a little bit.
And don't touch that.
And never, ever touch that one there. But yeah, that's the framework that, so many great minds and creative talents can play in. So long as it's playing within the boundaries. And who cares if it's canon or not? Canon is just a word, and it's like a big gun that likes to shoot its mouth off a lot of times, that is, gatekeeping, people from enjoying the things that they enjoy. Enjoy what you enjoy. Canon matters only at, say, up until like the MCU, there wasn't like a 15-part movie series that they were all trying to weave together and do a cohesive story. If you got one movie about one thing, you were damn lucky. So canon doesn't matter.
Yeah, like
how many people
Potter
have
mentioned the
King Arthur in the movies? How many versions of King Arthur do we have out there in movies and books and it's
video
just
games and comic
video
books
games. It's just an iconic character. Like, that's it. It is an icon. It's an icon. Here,
if nobody could veer from King Arthur canon, we never would have gotten Mists of Avalon, which both you and I love, Nessie.
Right, and you would not have seen Keira Knightley in that outfit.
Yes, exactly. And that would be the real crime, wouldn't it?
That would be the real crime, because we wouldn't have seen Keira Knightley in that outfit. And that's my stance on canon.
I like Kate's observation. It matters more on an academic level. Like, if you're really into the criticism and the analysis side of it, I think it does matter. And that's some level to the conversation. Yeah, it does. And that's some of what we do here. Like, if Star Wars put out a story wherein Han Solo was secretly a freaking Jedi the whole time, I would be like, this is canon breaking. But if Star Wars Visions does it, cool. I don't care, because it's not saying this is the real story and contradicting the story that came before.
Yeah, it wouldn't break my head canon.
I mean, that sounds very reminiscent of a What If.
It does, doesn't it?
Story. If Han Solo was a secret Jedi?
I don't know about Jedi.
But like,
my head canon is Han Solo is always Force sensitive.
When I'll tell you this, when Star Wars starts establishing that it takes place in a multiverse, the way that Marvel has established that,
they shouldn't have to. Like, you should just say,
okay, we're back to this. We're back to right where we started. It matters for the content and continuity of an individual narrative.
Only if the company says it does.
No, it matters because if you start changing things from the past all the time, then what I read last week has no bearing on what I'm reading this week.
Yeah. Well, if they give you,
I'm just saying, would What If really have had any less value if, say, they weren't diving into the multiverse right now, and they just said the show was called What If because we're doing some crazy shit out in left field?
Would not have changed. No, wouldn't change anything. I'm not convinced What If is fully canon. Doesn't need to be. But it doesn't mean that whether or not
I'm just saying, canon. I would love forget multiverses. I would love a What If Star Wars story where it's like, what if Padme survived?
Yeah, but that would be a non-canon story.
Yes, and I think it would be awesome.
Joe agrees with me.
Okay. Anyway, I think we're going to shut this down here. Oh, man, Leech, I see you popped in. Fattest Leech popped in right here at the end after me and John are. All right, the final bell is ringing, and we're both going back to our.
I just want to raise another point here that Nessie has read this wonderful book, but and this is a canon book, by the way. If you go into the opening pages of this book, it recounts a confrontation between Ahsoka and Maul on Mandalore, which we supposedly see during the events of the Clone Wars series finale, and it's different. But it's still a canon book. Oh my God. Let's lose our heads.
John, don't say that too loud. They'll take it away from us.
I'm just saying, as I said, canon is ever evolving.
Yeah, it is ever
So-
evolved. Okay, I think we've all made our points, and I think that as I predicted, there is no good answer, which is
No,
why a 2-hour conversation can be had about this topic, because there isn't. It's not 2 + 2 is 4. You know, it's oh, Fast Leash just got home from the Ren Fest, which is why they're late. Well, I hope you had a blast.
excited.
Yeah, because Ren Fair sounds like a good time, actually. All right. Well, I think I'm ready to stick a fork in this one. I would ask if you've got anything else to say, but that's just
Don't.
inviting like
Yeah.
more chaos at this point, I'm sure. So join us next week where John and I will be discussing the non-canon Star Wars show, Star Wars Visions. The first 5 episodes, unless 5 and 6 is a 2-parter, which I think there is a single 2-parter.
Okay.
I could be wrong,
We'll find out.
but if 5 and 6 are a 2-parter, we'll just talk the first 4. But we're probably going to do the first 5. Like when you load up Disney Plus, go from the top down. We're going to watch 5 episodes, and we'll talk about that next week.
I will say, I do just want to get in here that I had a lot of fun with this discussion. So thank you for putting up with me.
It was great.
But yeah, this was great.
Yeah. See, like our viewers loved it too. Yeah. So next week we're gonna talk some Visions. The week after that, season 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. We'll be wrapping it up. John still hasn't quite finished the series yet, but and I remembered who it was that asked to be on. It was Yogi from Through the Moon Door. So I'll be reaching out to him and asking him if he wants to join us for some Avatar conversation. All right. I guess that's it. You know, good conversation. See you, friends. Love you guys. If you, there is something.
Good point, Kate.
Right.
No.
It matters on a certain level. Anyway, if you want to join our Slack group where we keep conversations like this going all the time and have a Zoom call where we talk about this type of stuff all the time, send me an email at we3dragons@gmail.com. I will send you an invitation to our Slack group. It is rather like a Discord server. I have to send you an invite through your email, though. So email me, I'll email you back. And a lot of these fine folks from the chat are in there frequently. Ridiculous Ed Tollett be posting memes. Potter be trolling. Kate in there dropping book knowledge. Leaf keeping the Zoom held down. Like, yeah, come hang out with us. And yeah, I can't think of anything else. I wanted to make sure I plugged the Zoom.
Yeah, and daily you can decide which of your favorite anythings that you want to get rid of for the rest of your life, because
Anna will post a meme like that lady every morning without fail posts a meme of like, would you rather, or pick one of these, or one of these has to go, or like keeping it real. Anyway, yeah, Danny's in there all the time. Slack is awesome. Come join us there. Email me, we3dragons@gmail.com. All right, that's it. Love you guys. I'm going to be playing some more Fallout New Vegas on Thursday on my other channel. Link is down in the description. We'll see y'all next week for some Star Wars Visions. Nessie won't be here. She's working. But it'll be me and John, and maybe I'll find another sucker to come talk some Star Wars animation with us. All right, y'all, that's it. You know what it is. Until next time, peace. And be excellent to each other. Oh, John. You know what? Oh, wow. Bye, y'all.